Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. It's too bad it's a rainy morning, but nonetheless, it's an exciting morning. And I'm joined by a couple of folks who I want to introduce before I get into my remarks. Beside me is Dr. Hava Starkman, who's the obstetrics and gynecology resident physician at University of Toronto and co-chair of ContraceptiON. Welcome, and thank you for being here. Dr. Starkman. Dr. Starkman will say a few words after I've made my announcement this morning. On the other side is not the other side of the issue, other side of me, is Dr. Nour Bakhache, who's an obstetrics and gynecology resident physician at the University of Toronto and another co-chair of Cover Contraception. And behind me are a couple of young women named Emma and Lisa, who are young women who find themselves in the situation that too many young people, too many folks are facing, and that is the difficulty in covering all of the costs that people have. And so it really does gather up when it comes to the affordability of everyday life, when you're paying things like you're paying your student loans off, you're paying high rents, you're trying to make ends meet in the ever-increasing costs of everyday life in this province, and on top of it, you're paying $30 a month for your contraception. And so month after month after month, for whether it's your pill, whether it's your IUD, whether it's a ring, regardless of what type of contraception you're using, you have to pay every single month to have that available need covered. Nobody who chooses contraception should have to pay $30 a month, year after year, month after month after month, year after year after year. It's just not acceptable, and it's something that should have been dealt with long ago. If you need a vasectomy, if that's what your healthcare provider and yourself decide, then that's covered. But for women and others, it is not covered to have these other types of contraception available in an affordable way. And so that's what we're talking about today. We want to make sure that everybody has access to the contraception that they need without having to add it to your monthly costs. And so we're announcing that we will cover, the minute the election is over and we take office, we will cover the cost of contraception through our health plan. At the end of the day, OHIP should be covering this particular situation, and it's one that you have this conversation with your healthcare provider, with your doctor, with your nurse practitioner, and then you have to get your calculator out, or get your math mind going and figure out whether you can even afford it. That's not a choice people should be making. It's not really a choice. It's a necessity, and so it needs to be covered. And the New Democrats are making that commitment today, and I'm really happy to have folks here with me to talk about it. It's folks that have been really working hard for some time now to address this issue and to get this onto the front burner, if you will. And so we've been paying attention, and I'm proud to be here with these folks who have been so active. At the end of the day, life needs to be more affordable for folks. Everybody needs a more affordable life, and this is one way that we can reduce the financial burden on people, and it's absolutely required. We can actually put pieces in place in this province that help you save money each and every month, and this is one of them. So on that note, I'm going to ask Dr. Starkman to say a few words, and then we'll certainly take any questions you might have. Thanks very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Hava Starkman. I am a resident physician in obstetrics and gynecology at the University of Toronto and a co-founder of the Cover Contraception campaign. I'm joined today by my co-chair, Dr. Nour Bakhache, as well as our wonderful team of volunteers. We would first like to say thank you to Andrea Horwath and the NDP for inviting us to speak today about our campaign. Cover Contraception is a grassroots, non-partisan, volunteer-run campaign with the goal of achieving universal, no-cost contraception for all those in Ontario. The Cover Contraception campaign started at the beginning of the pandemic, when a group of doctors at the University of Toronto recognized that the COVID-19 pandemic was intensifying pre-existing inequities among marginalized populations, those of low socioeconomic status, cultural minorities, Black and Indigenous peoples, and residents of rural communities. The campaign started with an open letter calling on the Ontario government to implement universal, no-cost coverage for all. Despite over 1,000 healthcare providers and 15 professional organizations endorsing the letter and campaign, our pleas were not heard. We strongly believe that access to timely, affordable contraception is a pillar of reproductive human rights, a sentiment echoed across Canada as demonstrated by our colleagues in other provinces, including campaigns Access BC and Birth Control Manitoba. There is a significant amount of evidence that outlines the importance of universal, no-cost contraception. We know that cost is the single greatest barrier to contraception access in Ontario. We know that universal coverage improves access to contraception and confers significant savings in downstream medical costs. We know that inaction further marginalizes our most vulnerable populations. We see these impacts firsthand in the lives of our patients that cannot access care. The cost of contraception prevents them from getting necessary medical support and detrimentally impacts their quality of life. The reproductive health needs of our population are urgent and growing. The time to act is now. Ontario must step forward to champion the reproductive rights, health, and autonomy of its people and implement universal, no-cost contraception coverage for all. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Starkman. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the work you've both been doing on this really important issue. And I just want to, reinforce this is about access to something that people need, that people deserve to have access to, and that we have a responsibility to provide. And that's why I'm proud this morning to make this announcement. And we'll take any questions that folks might have.
So we'll invite media on site to line up at the mic and introduce yourself by name and outlet. It'll be one question, one follow-up.
Hi, Andy Takagi with QP Briefing. Just aside from this announcement, a quarter of the NDP caucus received income as a landlord or property investor last year, including yourself. Is this appropriate, or should MPPs rethink being a landlord or real estate investor given Ontario's housing crisis?
Well, it's an important question, and it's something that we're looking at in a really serious way in terms of the unaffordability of housing in Ontario today. And certainly I don't know the details of everybody's. I know my own details. But that's something that people do need to reflect on. One of the big issues that we have in our market is that investors are using property, housing, as an asset, as an investment opportunity, as opposed to housing for people. And so, if people are holding these properties and not renting them out, or renting them out at exorbitant rents, and not being thoughtful about how these properties are being utilized, then that's something certainly that each person needs to think about seriously. But we do know that a lot of the spiraling costs increase in the prices of housing are coming from investors that are not living in Ontario. So investors that are coming from other provinces and other countries, and it's really causing a huge problem in our housing market. We know that there should have been long ago a dampening of those kinds of initiatives, or there should be initiatives to dampen that kind of scenario. We were talking about it in the last election campaign. That's why a couple of years ago we put out a housing plan that includes increasing the non-resident taxes significantly and across the entire province, as well as vacancy taxes to try to avoid these units from being vacant, and many other things to try to help people get into the housing market. That's one answer, but there are many more. We don't focus at all on the missing middle housing. The kind of the entry-level housing, if you will, starter homes are a big problem here. We don't have those kinds of units being built, and they need to be built. Doug Ford's answer is big highways to big mansions that people can't afford. That's not the answer to our housing crisis. It helps his buddies, but it doesn't help everyday folks afford a home.
Does being a landlord or investor in real estate affect your ability to impartially legislate housing policy? And will you sell your rental properties or ask your MPPs to?
Oh, I've been trying to sell my rental property for a long time. And I can, maybe give you some of the details, but at the end of the day, the only home I own is the one I bought when I was 20-something, and it has an X in it. Let's just put it that way. And I'd rather not talk about any more details in that regard.
Has the schedule at Queen's Park for sitting changed, do you know of, for next week?
My understanding is the legislature's not sitting next week, and it's supposed to. The only day apparently that we're going in next week is budget day. And other than that, Doug Ford basically decided not to go to work for the rest of the week.
So you want to sit next week, Monday?
Of course. We're always anxious to be in the legislature, hold the government to account, and ask the tough questions of Doug Ford. We know his priorities are the wrong priorities. We know that his big cuts and bad choices hurt Ontarians. And we know that he wants people to forget all that stuff and just make promise after promise that he's not going to keep. We've seen that movie before. We've just had 4 years of it. That's our job as the opposition, as the official opposition, and we'd love to be in there doing our job right up until the day they announce a budget. And we're disappointed that we don't get that chance on behalf of the people of Ontario.
Seeing no further on-site questions, we'll move to Zoom.
And your first question on Zoom comes from Matt Bailey, Global News. Matt, please go ahead.
Morning, Matt.
Hi, good morning. Just to follow up on, I believe it was Jamie's question there, of how you would like to be back in the House. Global News has some new polling numbers out today that show the NDP behind the Liberals, who do have fewer seats. I'm wondering if you think that being in the House is actually an effective way to get your numbers up over top of them, and even closer to PCs, or if you think that being out of the field is more likely to improve your chances.
Well, I think that doing our jobs is what people expect us to do, and so walking away from the legislature before that job is completed in terms of the legislative calendar, I think is just wrong. I mean, I think that's just wrong. I think Doug Ford shouldn't have done that. This is more about what Doug Ford would like to do than anything else. But what I can tell you is the numbers will continue to change, there's no doubt, but one number's not changing. And that number is that the majority of Ontarians do not want Doug Ford to form another government. And so now our job is to continue to talk to Ontarians right up until Election Day about who has the best chance to defeat Doug Ford. And as New Democrats, the official opposition, we're going into this campaign with 40 seats. The Liberals have 7. There's really only one party this time that can defeat Doug Ford, and that's the NDP. So that's what we are going to be focusing on over the next while, and show Ontarians that the things that have been broken by the Liberals first for 15 years, which is why folks walked away from them, if people recall. I mean, we did have hallway medicine, we had the gas plant scandal, we had the sell-off of Hydro One. People walked away from Stephen Del Duca's Liberals for a good reason. What we know now, though, is that Doug Ford, the defeat of the Doug Ford government is job number one. It's the priority. So I'm asking people to come together. This time, it's the NDP that's going to make the difference. We're the ones that have the ability to defeat Doug Ford, and that's the job at hand.
And do you have any concerns about getting oxygen to announcements like this one when you have, an adjourned House and several cabinet ministers out on the road making government announcements at this moment that many of which do look very campaign style at this moment?
Well, not just at this moment, but for the last little while, I would say. I think people have a pretty clear understanding of what Doug Ford's game is right now. He's spreading out a lot of money, making a lot of promises, but we've just been through 4 years of promises that he didn't keep, and of big cuts that he made that hurt people and that hurt our healthcare system, that hurt our education system, that hurt the services that people rely on day in and day out. And coming out of COVID-19, those are the very things that we need to rebuild, not continue to cut. And so Doug Ford's going to continue to cut because that's what he does. He can make all the announcements in the world, but we know that if we give him a chance by re-electing him, he is not going to keep those promises, and his buddies will do very, very well for another 4 years, and the rest of us are going to pay the price.
Your next question comes from Nitin Chopra from Prime Asia TV News. Nitin, please go ahead.
Good morning, Michi.
This is Nitin from Prime Asia TV. You said if you are elected and you will raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour. In British Columbia, we have an NDP government, but in BC, the minimum wage is $15.65. Why can't we increase in BC also? Then we can trust that if you are elected, you will raise that fast. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question, and I will leave the BC situation to my friend John Horgan, but what I can tell you is people can't make ends meet here in Ontario, and that's been the case for a very long time. We know that people lost thousands of dollars, over $5,000, close to $6,000 when Doug Ford canceled the increase to the minimum wage. Granted, it was an election ploy by Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals, but it was not followed through on by Doug Ford, and as a result, people had a harder time. And we've now seen, of course, everything going up. The cost of everything is spiraling. People are working full-time. Sometimes they're working 2 and 3 jobs just to cobble together full-time hours or more. People working 50, 60 hours in several jobs at minimum wage and still can't pay the bills. People who are working now relying on food banks. That is not sustainable, and it's not something that we should feel proud of as a province. So what we've done is put out a very practical, thoughtful, gradual plan to get us to a $20 minimum wage over the next couple of years, and that starts with an increase to $16 an hour in October of this year, and then every year for the next couple of years, the increase will come, a $1 increase on May 1st. We've done it that way through consultation. We know that business communities, that the business community doesn't like sudden announcements that they have to scramble to figure out how to address. So we've given them a plan for the next couple of years as to how the minimum wage is going to go up so that they can build that into their business plans. We also have a plan for transitioning smaller businesses and providing them with some support to get there as well, because we know particularly Main Street mom and pops have been hit hard, and we want them to be able to survive and thrive to continue to provide that employment for folks. And so our plan, I think, is a really important departure from where we've been for 15 years with the Liberals, who really didn't raise minimum wage almost at all, a tiny bit, very, very, very gradual, and very little. And of course, Doug Ford, who only started talking about workers in the last couple of months after he's after he has paid more attention to his buddies and friends all the way through his term in office.
Thank you. Follow-up is inflation is 6.7%, which hit last month, and this is highest in the last 21 years. Now we have seen our MPs, our ministers, our premiers, everybody's salary is linked with the inflation. Why can't a common Canadian salary be linked with the inflation? Because cost of living is very high in Canada now. So why these two policies our elected executive salaries are linked with inflation, why not a common candidate too? What is your view on that? Thank you.
I'm just trying to clarify what your question is. Is it why don't we link the wages to inflation? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh yeah, so that's a very good point. It's actually a very good point. And what we've said in terms of our commitment is that we absolutely will be raising the minimum wage in the way that I've described because because that's the certainty that's necessary. But that doesn't mean that's the end of the conversation about how we move forward in a way that wages keep up with the cost of living over the longer term. That's something that has a conversation that has never been taken up by a sitting government in any serious way. Maybe the conversation has been taking place, but there has been no results. So we're starting with the commitment to show people that we're serious about making sure that people who work hard each and every day should be able to, or we'll help them be able to, by ensuring they have a decent minimum wage, pay the bills, pay the rent, and put food on the table. Make sure that that they have everything they need to build a good life here in Ontario. This province is a very, very, very wealthy province. We've seen through COVID that some folks did really, really well during COVID-19. Others, not so much. It's created even greater division in our province, and that's not healthy, and that's not what a prosperous province does for all of the people that call it home. And so those are the changes that we're looking to make.
Thank you.
Sorry. Your next question comes from Richard Southern, City News. Richard, please go ahead.
Hi, Andrea. Good morning. I know it's still on 42 days until the election, and I know the only poll that counts is on that election day. But if I'm looking at the polls, I'm sure you are too. And the last two polls you've had out of the past 24 hours have your NDP down between 10 and 11 points. Why do you think that is?
Well, Richard, as I said, the most important part of those polls, in my estimation, is the fact that the majority of people want to get rid of Doug Ford. We have a whole campaign ahead of us, and we're going to be spending our time talking to Ontarians from one end of the province to the other. And people will use the campaign period. Let's not forget, campaigns matter. And folks will focus in on what kind of future Ontario wants and needs. Thus far, it's been clear that a majority of folks want to see Doug Ford defeated. And so the campaign is the opportunity to talk to people about how do we achieve that. And this time we have to come together. We have to come together if we're going to defeat Doug Ford. And New Democrats are going in with 40 seats. Liberals are going in with 7. We have the best opportunity now to defeat Doug Ford. And we have to do it now. We can't wait 4 years from now. We have to do it now. And that's what the campaign's all about, is showing people that there is a path to defeat Doug Ford. And I'm looking forward to that, even though it's still 42 days away. I'm looking forward to June the 2nd.
Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate that. Wanted to get your take on one hot button issue that came up the past week, and that is the restriction of guns. The Liberals are promising to ban guns. Would you also move to ban guns in the province of Ontario, number one? And number two, I don't know if you have any take on this. The FAO has just released a report saying the majority of Ontario families receive more in provincial services than they pay in taxes. Thank you, Andrea.
So the first part on the handguns, we've for a long time have talked about the banning of illegal handguns in urban centers because we know that they're a part of the gun violence problem. But we also know successive governments, including Liberal and Conservative governments, have not done enough to support folks who are at risk of gun violence and at risk of engaging in gang activity. We know, in fact, Doug Ford has cut, the minute he got elected, he started cutting the kinds of programs that support racialized youth, for example, Black and racialized youth. That's not acceptable. It's not just a one side of the coin. Young people deserve dignity. They deserve opportunity. They deserve support in the education system. They deserve the reduction of barriers to access to opportunity, and we have to start focusing on those pieces. Otherwise, we'll never stop that situation where people feel that they have no other place that they belong than in a gang. So there's more than one issue that needs to be addressed if we're going to reduce gun violence, and we're committed to doing that work along with community. There's a lot of community organizations that do that work already, and we need to be supporting them, not cutting their funding like Doug Ford has done. Oh, the other side of the question. Can you repeat the other half of the question, Richard? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. I just wanted to get your take. It just sort of came in, so if you don't have any input, that's fine. But apparently the FAO said the majority of Ontario families receive more in provincial services than they pay in taxes.
Well, part of the issue that we have in Ontario is that some people are paying very little taxes, and some people are not paying. Well, let me put it this way: the people who are have the capacity to pay the most taxes are not paying their fair share. And is it important that we provide the kinds of services that allow us to have a society where people have a chance at building a great life? Absolutely. That's fundamentally a value that I have, and I think most Ontarians and most Canadians have that value. It shouldn't be a divided society. And when we talk about things like, for example, the minimum wage, talk about things like access to an ability to see the dream come true of your desire to buy your first home, the desire to have your kids be able to go to post-secondary education and build a good life for themselves. There are so many pieces to how you build a good life here, and to make sure that those kinds of pathways are accessible to people, that people can actually see those dreams fulfilled, is part of the job of government. And so if it's, when we look at the services that we provide, I don't think anybody would say we need to provide less health care for people. We need to provide less support for people. That's not the case. Certainly, people with a lot of money not only don't pay their fair share of taxes, but they don't need to access public services because they can just go and buy whatever they want. They can go to the States and buy their health care. They can travel around the world and get the surgeries that they need. That's not what the vast majority of Ontarians do or should be doing. And that's where government and public services come in.
We're 1 week away from the budget. Would you like to see a tax cut?
What I would like to see, and certainly we're not going to see that from the Ford government, is that those folks who make the most, the richest and wealthiest among us, the very, very profitable corporations who actually did much, much better during the pandemic while everybody else was suffering, they need to pay their fair share. But everyday folks who are having a hard time paying the rent, having a hard time keeping a roof over their head and food on the table for their kids, definitely not. Middle income, low income families, middle class folks, working families, definitely not. They don't need any further burden when it comes to costs, and so absolutely not for them.
And your next and final question comes from Rob Ferguson, the Toronto Star. Rob, please go ahead.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, good morning, Andrea. Just to pick up on your announcement a little bit, my feed froze a little bit when you were talking about it. I wondered, did you mention the cost of this promise on OHIP covering the prescription contraception?
We didn't, Rob, but as you know, we've been talking a lot about our pharmacare plan in the last couple of years, and so you'll be hearing more about the fullness of that plan as the next couple weeks unfold, including costing. I thought you said your feet froze, not your feed.
No.
I think, what do your feet have to do about that?
No, my feet are wet. And just another question, a different subject. With inflation being what it is, around 6 or 7%, do you think your party and other parties need to revisit their promises on the minimum wage and push those promised minimum wage levels higher?
Well, you know what? There's no doubt that it's something that we're keeping an eye on. The most important thing for us is to make sure that people have a wage that pays the bills. People have good jobs right now. People have good jobs, but they still can't make ends meet in this increasingly unaffordable economy. So we're definitely going to keep an eye on the cost of living versus the minimum wage. But one of the commitments we've made in our conversations with chambers of commerce, boards of trade, BIAs, folks like that, is that we don't spring anything on them unexpected. And that's something that we're going to continue to do. So if we do need to make adjustments, we will certainly be doing the consultation necessary to give a heads up to the folks that are going to be required to pay those higher wages. But there's definitely a real concern that people people just can't make. How many people have you talked to who, for example, have to use their vehicle for their work? I think of PSWs, for example, in community that have to travel back and forth to different patients, different clients. They're paying gas prices that are, that are crazy. And on top of it, we had just had a long weekend, and so we saw the gas prices jack up once again, as always happens. That's why we talk about gas price regulation, for example. It's a way to get that volatility out when it comes to the pricing. So the thing is, there are other solutions other than minimum wage that will help with affordability. Some of them are helping people pay for the cost of medications, for example. Some of them are regulating gas prices, for example, getting the speculation out of the housing market, for example. So there's a couple of sides to there's two sides to the coin. There's the wages, which we've already made commitments around, and we're going to keep an eye on, as you indicate. But then there's also taking the affordability seriously and removing the burden where we can on families who are paying out of their pockets for things that we could be covering.
And that's all the time we have for today. So Andrea, I'll hand it back to you to close things off.
Thanks very much. Thanks for your questions, everyone, and thank you to these wonderful women who are here to support this announcement. Very much appreciate it.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out all of our social media platforms. For more information, check out our website.